our councillor values respect, integrity, accountability, transparency, and responsiveness. Thank you.
Item 2, acknowledgement of traditional landowners. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Item 3, privacy notice. The public meeting is being streamed via live, our website, Council Meetings and Minutes Strathbogie Shire, and made available for public access on our website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item 4, governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9-2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are numbered 1 to 9 on page 4 and 5 of our agenda. Voting. If a meeting is open to the public, to members of the public, or is being live streamed, voting on any matter may be by any method resolved by council that enables those in attendance and those watching a live stream broadcast to clearly see which way a council has voted at the time a vote is taken. In the absence of the council resolving an alternative method, voting on any matter is by a show of hands. An outline of how the meeting will work. We welcome the people in our public gallery and also those viewing this meeting online through our live stream via our website. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules. If we have technical difficulties today during today's meeting, which means we're unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given the public gallery is open. If a councillor or officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. The public gallery is reminded that as this is a public meeting, we respectfully ask that all attendees remain quiet and courteous during the meeting. I would take this opportunity to remind everyone to have their mobile phones on silent. Item 5. Apologies, leave of absence. Are there any apologies or leaves of absence for today's meeting? We have Councillor Greg Carlson, who is an apology, he's a leave of absence. Item 6, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillors, I will take all papers as being read. That being the case, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest? Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I just wanted to note a conflict of interest, a general conflict of interest. It relates to item 11.1.2, planning applications received and planning applications determined 1st of April 2025 to 31st of April 2025. But given that this report is applications received and council is not making a decision on the application, I've spoken with governance and our monitor and I'm comfortable staying in the meeting and participating at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Report no. Moving to item 7, confirmation of minutes, decisions of the previous meeting. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Let me just get back to our papers. I would like to move a motion as is written in the recommendation on page 6 of our papers.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. Can I have a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition? Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No? On that basis, I will now put that to a vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Mayor's report, and I apologise in advance, it's a bit of a long one. So firstly, I would like to formally welcome our new permanent CEO, Rochelle Quattrocchi. Rochelle commenced with us on the 5th of May and has hit the ground running. On behalf of the councillor group, we very much look forward to working with you. At an extraordinary meeting on the 29th of April, council endorsed the draft council plan 2025 to 29 and other strategic documents in the 2025-26 draft budget for public consultation for a 3-week period. Submissions on these draft documents close at 11:59 p.m. tonight, so there is still time to have your say. Strathbogie Shire Council is actively advocating for our community as inland rail works continue in Euroa. We understand concerns about the removal of trees along Anderson Street and are working closely with inland rail and arborists to protect as many as possible, especially those on council managed land. While the works are part of a state government project, council is focused on achieving the best outcomes for our community, ensuring environmental, cultural and local values are respected. We're committed to continuing to push for outcomes that reflect our community's voice. I've taken part in several media engagements to represent and promote council's work and advocacy. I was interviewed by the Euroa Gazette to highlight the success of Explore Euroa Day and the positive feedback from local businesses and visitors. It was a great day and one I thoroughly enjoyed. Following the last council meeting, I spoke with ABC Radio about council's engagement approach regarding Australia Day and participated in interviews on 3AW Mornings with Tom Elliott and 3AW Breakfast with Ross and Russ and Hit FM 96.9 to discuss the Emergency Services and Volunteers Fund, as well as TV interviews on channels 7, 9 and 10. State Government's Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund will hit our community hard. Our farmers, our families and our small businesses are already struggling, and now they're being hit with increases which could be up to 150% in some cases. In parallel, council has taken a firm stand against the state government's proposed Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund, and last Thursday's decision has been more than disappointing. Our farmers, families and small business owners are already doing it so tough with soaring cost of living pressures, and now they're being asked to carry the weight of a levy that could double or triple their rates. This is an unjust and disproportionate hit on rural communities like ours. I attended the Emergency Services Tax Workshop held earlier this month by Annabelle Cleland and the Shadow Minister for Emergency Services, Danny O'Brien, where I heard first-hand from CFA and SES volunteers and farmers about their concerns. The state government is shifting the financial burden of emergency services to those least able to absorb it, without consultation, support or regard for the long-term impact on regional Victoria. It's unacceptable, and we will continue to fight it and advocate for this levy to be scrapped. If they won't reverse the decision, then the least they can do is take responsibility for collecting it. This should not fall on our councils. We are acutely aware of the impact felt deeply by our farmers this week when so many Victorian regions were drought declared, but not Strathbogie, and many of our neighbours. We are already working on this as a priority for our immediate advocacy. Advocacy has also been a key focus regarding safety concerns at the Avenel Rail Crossing. I have engaged directly with relevant authorities and regional stakeholders to push for urgent safety upgrades in response to growing community concern. On a brighter note, I felt incredibly fortunate to attend the Ruffy CFA Good Friday Appeal event and spend the day with the wonderful Ruffy community supporting a major fundraiser for the Royal Children's Hospital. The hospitality and company were outstanding, and it was a privilege to witness such strong community spirit and values in actions. On the 24th of April, I attended the Strathbogie Community Anzac Day event and I laid a wreath on behalf of residents of Strathbogie Shire. This was one of the many moving Anzac Day events that were attended by councillors who laid wreaths and represented our communities across the Shire. I would like to thank my fellow councillors who attended Dawn and other services on Anzac Day. Deputy Mayor Councillor Scott Jeffrey in Athnell, Councillor Vicky Hussell in Euroa and Longwood, Councillor Fiona Stevens in Ngambie, Councillor Clark Holloway in Violet Town. Earlier this month, Kestrel Aviation, a renowned Mangalore-based company, celebrated its 40th anniversary, known for its vital role in disaster response and strong contributions to the local economy and communities. Kestrel is a true asset to the region. I was so fortunate to attend the celebrations, marking an important milestone for a standout Shire business, and a big shout out to Ray and Eleanor. What an amazing business they've built. I have made a conscious effort to connect over the past 4 weeks to spend time out and about in our community with traders and retailers. Not that my credit card or my husband would agree with my approach, but I'm going to do a huge shout out to many of the wonderful, resilient business owners who are so often family-based businesses. In Euroa, The Wine List, The Nest, Fair Enough, Cafe 56, Balmatin Butchery, Petrostar, Thompson Better Electrics, the 7 Hotels, Bowser Bean. In Ngambie, the Corner Nook, Somewhere, the Royal Mail Hotel, Ngambie Brewery, 1860, Harvest Moon, Burke, Elder Bay. And in surrounding areas, we have Fowles, the Daily Dose, Harvest Home, Avenel Roadhouse, and the White Hart Longwood. And these are just to name a few of the businesses that I've visited and reached out in the last month. They have welcomed me during my visits, and I've listened to what they've got to say and how they're approaching their business. We're blessed to have so many wonderful, hardworking, unique businesses in our Shire, and I applaud everyone to get out and support them. Last Friday, CEO Michelle Quattrocchi and I attended the Municipal Association of Victoria State Council. As the MAV is the state peak body, motions give a mandate for MAV leadership and advocacy on issues of importance to the sector. This benefits our community by advancing and prioritising local advocacy priorities and promoting the role of local government. Strathbogie Shire Council had the opportunity to put forward 3 motions to the meeting covering the Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund, Natural Disaster Recovery Funding and Local Government Sustainability. And that is my report. It's a very long one. Move to item 9.6 on page 6, councillor reports. Before we move on, I'd like to invite any councillor who would like to make a brief verbal report to the meeting. Councillor Halsall.
Thank you, Mayor. After 6 months in the role of councillor, I'm feeling more confident myself and with my peers, our teamwork and the way in which business is conducted in the chamber. I feel a sense of positivity for growth and development across the municipality and hope that others within the community share my growing sense of confidence in council. I would like to pay my respects to our Mayor, Claire Kennedy, for the work that she's been doing across the Shire and in the media. Our Mayor continues to be committed to our community with a personal mandate to go above and beyond and lead by example. I feel confident that opportunities will be seized as they present under her leadership. We have welcomed our CEO, Rachel Quattrocchi, into the chamber. Sorry, I lost my spot. Rochelle. Oh my God. Rochelle has already proven herself to be a hit the ground running type of leader. Her experience is obvious in the chamber and I'm sure the community share my thoughts as they have the opportunity to meet and interact with her as she attends markets and events throughout the municipality. I enjoyed the presentation by the Tungarung Land and Waters Council, which provided the opportunity to meet Matt, Bonnie and another Matt. Okay, that's nice. We heard about the values of the organisation, breadth of services and the willingness to work in partnership with council. The presentation was another positive and valuable interaction to support the ongoing working relationship that with our Indigenous community organisation. Inland Rail has presented to Council on the 30th of May. Navigating our underpass development continues to be a moving feast. I believe they heard our feedback regarding the timely notification, tree preservation and the importance of pedestrian crossings along the town. I'm excited to see the works happening in the town and I encourage as many businesses as possible to put themselves in a position to benefit from the spike in activity around town. I commend Fair Enough for their adaptability to serve and sustain the construction team. As you would know, I have a keen interest in economic development around the Shire. I am excited to see housing developments and from small duplex projects to large-scale housing developments. I'm attending a planning forum with Councillor Stevens this tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. I look forward to furthering my understanding of the challenges in the planning scheme that support the state housing goals, of which Strathbogie as a municipality has been earmarked for upward of 2,000 new dwellings. Guiding this growth as best we can to achieve positive long-term outcomes will be a key role of council going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beast, for that report. Councillor Halsall. Sorry, so we've all had a very big few days, so none more than you, sorry. And it's great to see you in the chamber and thank you for making time to get back here. Sorry, Councillor Beast, did you want to do a report? No. I'm just imagining that.
I'll keep it really brief. Sorry. Just as you asked. Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to acknowledge that Saturday was Ida Hobbit Day and we flew the rainbow flag both here in Euroa and in Ngambie to celebrate the queer community that we love to support, and we're really proud that they form a big part of our community here in Strathbogie. I also want to just have a quick shout out to the Festival of Fungi, which started last week. There's a fabulous exhibition on in the Shire's Art Box down Binney Street. If you haven't, go and check it out. Some of the artwork in that came from the group, or one of the groups getting a grant through our Strengthening Community Fund to do art workshops last year with community, and some of that artwork is now being exhibited in the Shire's travelling art gallery, which is a wonderful thing. And this weekend we also have the Bioluminescence Festival down at Sevens Creek, which in previous years council has supported, but they're able to go on their own now. And I think it's a really great example of how communities can work to find funding through other means. It might not mean that they're always going to not come to us for funding support, but it's really great to see them being able to continue their work with the Fungi Festival, which is always hugely popular, especially with the students that get to make these most amazing projections, and it's just a really fabulous night. So that's from 6 to 9 down at the Sevens. Sorry, not the Sevens, the Northie, the other one. Navigate getting around that. The new diversion, Burkett Street. It's maybe not as direct as it used to be, but head down to the Northie for that this Friday night, and there's other events as well you'll see on our page. And then finally on Saturday, I'm really excited to join with the Mayor and other councillors potentially and officers at the reconciliation event at Shadforth Reserve in Violet Town. It's a first event for them to be putting on in partnership with Yorta Yorta Nation, and there's some really great activities that are happening throughout that day, including a smoking ceremony, a welcome ceremony by Yorta Yorta elders, and other examples, spear throwing. There's all sorts of wonderful things on there, a family-friendly day that celebrates Indigenous culture, but also the incredible community group that make Shadforth Reserve and that area happen, and be a really great resource for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binks. Does any other councillor wish to have a report? No. On that basis, we move to page 6, item 10, public questions. Thanks to all those people who submitted questions for the meeting today. And a reminder to submit your question 30 hours prior to the council meeting. We received several questions outside of the time frame for this council meeting, and our governance team have provided a response to these individuals. CEO Quattrocchi, are there any questions from the public?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have 4 questions today. And the first question comes from Robin Weatherall. Robin, I'm not sure if you're in the gallery. Yes. Robin, I will proceed to read your question and respond to them. Your question, Robin, will the council consider McMaster's Lane upgrade to improve the street parking facilities for tradies vehicles? McMaster's Lane offers opportunity to improve drainage, thank you, and off-street parking surfaces on a shared cost basis with a reasonable number of private ownerships adjacent. Thank you, Robin, for your question. We are currently developing our Capital Works program for 2025-26 with a focus on renewal of existing assets. There is no current plan for the upgrade of, I believe it is Alex McMaster's Laneway. I will, however, have Oliver McNulty, the Director of Sustainable Infrastructure, to make contact with you following this meeting to discuss your concerns in relation to the parking and access that if you have raised. Our second question comes from Graham Newton. Graham, are you in the gallery? Thank you, Graham. Graham, I'll proceed to read out your question. In agenda number 11.1.1.3b, which is a planning matter that is before us today, regarding 2 Millards Lane, Euroa, I would like to know how in these current economic and climate conditions does one demonstrate or guarantee that agriculture activities can and will continue into the future? Thank you, Graham, for your question. Strathbogie Shire's council planning scheme and local policies support the ongoing use of rural land for agriculture. through planning as a key employer and income generator. The Shire includes some quality agricultural land that is an asset and should be protected or for productive use and future economic development. The underlying principle in determining the future of the rural areas is the protection of the amenity and environment of the Shire. The Shire's unique amenity is a key attractor for residents and visitors, and the health of the environment directly influences amenity as well as agricultural prospect. A key economic driver within our economic strategy is recognition that the rural areas of the Shire have a role and a value that includes agriculture, both commercial and lifestyle, as well as tourism, winemaking, horse breeding, environment and rural living. This proposes a rural area that provides for the continuation of farming, but also supports the growth of tourism and protection of environmental values. Question 3 that we have received from Sally Barnett. Sally, are you in the gallery? Thank you, Sally. Sally, I'll proceed to read your question. What does Council define as ongoing farming sustainable activity, and what practices does it include? In reference to horses, as outlined in page 16 of 23 in the officer's report, page 32 in agenda item number 11.1.1. For the benefit of the gallery and those watching, that is a planning report before us that considers 2 Millards Lane, Euroa. Thank you, Sally, for your question. Our planning officers assess planning applications against the planning framework. Strathbogie Shire Council planning scheme and local policies, sustainable farming activities in Strathbogie can extend to practices that focus on environmental stewardship, resource management and community engagement. This can include implementing conservation techniques that promote biodiversity and also reduce environmental impacts and support local farmers and the agricultural industry. In some cases, the keeping of horses may be considered as part of a sustainable farming operation, but this depends entirely on how the activity is managed, its scale, and how it aligns with the agricultural land use objectives. Ultimately, as part of the planning application process, we do encourage the applicant to demonstrate through appropriate documentation how the proposal may meet the intention of the planning policy, zoning and land use requirements that contributes to sustainable farming outcomes. Now for the last question there is from Sue Holbrook. Is Sue in the audience? Thank you, Sue. And I'll proceed to read your question. In agenda item number 11.1.1, and for the benefit of the gallery and those watching, this is the planning application that considers 2 Millards Lane, Euroa. How does the planning department think that a horse breeding and husbandry enterprise results in the permanent loss of productive farming that is currently part of the local economy, when Strathbogie claims to be the horse capital of Victoria? Thank you, Sue, for your question. Strathbogie Shire does recognise and support our thriving horse thoroughbred breeding and racing industry. The Australian thoroughbred breeding industry is a significant contributor to the national economy, generating more than $1.16 billion annually. Horse breeding and husbandry are legitimate agricultural uses, but the concern in the planning matter 11.1.1 is with land subdivision, not land use per se. The subdivision of agriculture land reduces long-term farming potential and contributes to the gradual loss of agricultural land in the local economy. As mentioned, a key economic driver within our economic strategy is the recognition that the rural areas of the Shire have a role a value that includes agriculture, both commercial and lifestyle, as well as tourism, winemaking, horse breeding, environment and rural living. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, CEO. We now move to item 11, officers' reports. We go to page 7. We now move to the item 11.1.1, planning report, planning application B 2025-023-2, -2 Millards Lane, Euroa. The purpose of the report is to bring before council a recommendation in response to an application for a 2-lot subdivision dwelling excision within the farming zone for decisions. Councillors, we have several people present and online who would like to be heard on this agenda item. In accordance with section 37.4 and 37.61 of the governance rules, submitters, objectors will be heard first. Applicants will be heard second. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address council. Presenters, can you please state your name before you commence your presentation? Ross Carrington, President of the gallery. Over to you, Ross, if you could just state your name and then commence your presentation. You've got 5 minutes.
All right, you sit down.
Absolutely. You can stand or sit, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm Ross Carrington, the owner of 7 Creeks Estate, an adjoining property to the applicant. Thank you for listening to me today. And I just might add, Mayor, I was on the radio a couple of calls after you with Tom Elliott, and reinforcing your points on that. And thank you very much for your stand. It was terrific to hear. It inspired me to ring the show and say the same thing. Thank you. Sorry. Anyway, back to this point. This is setting the planning of 2 Millards Lane, Euroa. 21.48 hectares is an uneconomical area to be subdivided from a property. It will create real issues for future generations. This property was in total 102 hectares when the applicant purchased it, in 2018 or something. The applicant has subdivided already approximately 40 hectares from the 102 about 6 years ago and sold it. And the original block, the purchaser erected a permanent dwelling that's running a fairly well-maintained lifestyle block with some cattle on it. On the 21.48 hectares, there is no permanent housing created. There's no power connected, probably doesn't need to be, I guess, you could argue, or substantial water source to sustain an agricultural enterprise. There is permanent shedding, stables and numerous horse yards, but there's not much grazing area on that block. The 40 hectare next to it has poor access, with a recent driveway built on a watercourse next to a neighbouring entrance, which just happens to be ours. There is no gutter created. The driveway has no setback and does not provide for a truck entering the property without blocking the road and entrance to our own property. The property is surrounded by large hectare productive farms, and in this farming zone, a block of 21.48 hectares cannot in isolation be viable, particularly considering all the sheds, outbuildings and yards that already occupy the area. The property, 2 Millards Lane, is located in granitic sand country and is famous for its growth of weeds, including panic grass, which covers the road each year after it matures and sets seed. The property has never had any improved pasture sown down and is therefore very unproductive. And subdivision will only put more pressure on the occupiers to improve the pasture in order to make that property viable. Improving the productivity can be achieved over the whole area economically, but not over a subdivided 21 and 40 hectares separately. In summary, the total property of 61.48 hectares is a viable property for many agricultural pursuits which are currently run on it. However, to further subdivide the property will create 2 unviable properties that would be out of character of the area. The 7 Creeks Estate Road needs to be considered for an upgrade if the subdivision goes ahead, as the traffic on the road is already at a level that is at a design limit. Today, there are large horse trucks, grain, stock trucks travelling along, increased residents living on a number of the subdivided 40-hectare blocks, travelling on the road each day. To my knowledge, over the last 52 years, the road has not had any widening or upgrade of the corners, which have become quite hazardous in recent times with the increased traffic. The subdivision will only put more pressure on this road. Finally, it's commendable the courses that the applicant runs for disabled and other people with needs. However, it's not necessary to subdivide the property in order to continue this work. The total property has been carrying out many productive pursuits, which will be lost if the applicant reduces the size of the property through the subdivision application. Thank you.
Sorry, that was 5 minutes. Sorry, spot on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well. I now call on David Hawken. Present, if he's in the gallery. Thank you, Ross.
Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, I want to say that I'm very envious of all of you for living in this beautiful place, especially on a day like today, driving up through truly magnificent jewels, Victoria's crown. In my 5 minutes, I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about my sister. I want to talk about the advice that you've been provided. And I want to also talk about the decision that's before you today. I also want to say that I live on 18 hectares of highly productive land with horses, an adjustment property that makes a profit. But before I start, I want to use an analogy. It's Tuesday today. Let's say that your teenage child comes home and says to you, can I go out with some friends on Saturday night? And they explain where they're going, they explain what they're doing. And you say to them, well, I'm supportive of you doing that, as long as you tidy your room and as long as you do the dishes at least twice this week. Isn't this giving your child in principle support to go out? And then on Saturday, after they've complied with all your requests, are you going to let them go? Or are you going to say, I'm sorry, I've changed my mind? Because that's basically what the situation is here today. On to my first issue, my sister. Vanessa's always been passionate about horses and has made major contributions to the industry. She has run successful equine and agricultural businesses in Gornong and Euroa. She's helped other businesses on smaller acreages run equine businesses less than 20 acres that are successful and profitable. Vanessa's horse breeding bloodlines, although not thoroughbreds, have competed at Olympic level and are highly valuable. She is determined and has achieved more as a single woman than many would have thought possible. When Vanessa had documented evidence from the planning department that her application would be supported, she threw herself into the task of meeting the criteria and borrowed $150,000 to complete the specific list of works. Council gave in-principle support on 6 separate occasions, which the average person could only interpret as support for planning approval. And I quote from the planning manager from one of his emails, I wish to confirm that the officers are supportive of a future planning permit subject to the list of improvements being implemented. And then further, another email. As per my previous advice, council officers provide in-principle support for the proposal. 6 separate occasions support was provided. The term support clearly implies a recommendation for planning approval. The intent of this communication is so blatantly obvious that for anyone to try and suggest otherwise, I believe is deceptive. In my 30 years as a public relations specialist, I've helped more than 60 of Victoria's 79 councils deal with issues, including Strathbogie, with Kerwin's Bridge and the Vago report. The councils who retain community trust act with integrity and honesty. Their response passes the pub test of what is fair and reasonable. The current recommendation does not pass that test in any way. The report for Vanessa's application that is before council could have been written completely differently. It could have been supportive and still within the guides of your planning permit. The farming zone, which is it says in the report, allows for the approval of an existing dwelling. The report should have had a factual account of all the interactions between council and Vanessa if it was going to be transparent as per the values that you've got in your wall and you recounted today. It's not transparent. It did not provide the council with all the information it should have had to make an informed decision. The report did bring to your attention all the risks. Sorry, didn't bring to attention all the risks. It's not just VCAT, it's the possibility of civil action. It's the possibility of negative publicity, and perhaps most importantly, the possibility of loss of community trust. In 2 weeks, I will be speaking to 300 local government professionals at the LG annual conference on building community trust. I would love to use this case study as a positive example of how you build community trust. So, will you act with integrity? Will you honour the commitment made by this council to Vanessa? It's the best way to mitigate the risks. It's the best way to build community trust rather than erode it. And I ask you, I implore you, please to be accountable and propose an alternative motion to support the application. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Vanessa Hawkins.
I'm starting now.
You tell me when you're ready to start. You'll press the start button. Like a glass of water before you start.
Oh, that's really lovely.
You'll arrange that, please, Amanda. Take a deep breath. Would you like someone else to go before you, or while you pledge your thoughts?
I'm here now.
Okay, no worries.
Need a bit of patience. Yes,
You ready to start? Okay, we're pressing the button on the timer.
Dear Deputy Mayor and councillors, I appreciate your willingness to listen to what I have to say and to hear things from my perspective. I've been a registered nurse, a director of the Australian Horse Industry Council and a primary producer for the last 40 years. I've dedicated my life to making things better for the Australian horse industry. Before I go on with that, I would just like to refer to Mr. Carrington's comments. I'd like to refute some of the statements made by Mr. Carrington. The gateway, which has been recently installed by Earthworks, is still under construction, and the new gates will be set back from the road and quite safe for large vehicles to enter when it's finished. I had to install those gates because Mr. Carrington's cattle escaped onto the road and into my paddock while this was all going on, so I put up temporary fencing to prevent that from happening in the future. It's not on a watercourse. No knowledge of my farm or practices re pasture management has Mr. Carrington had any information on, so I don't know how he can comment on that. And I can provide evidence with significant invoices and consultations with agronomists because I've spent thousands trying to improve pastures. I'd also suggest that the significant trucks that he refers to belongs to a different business on Millards Lane. I moved to the Strathbogie Shire in 2015 following extensive research. This place has captured my heart. After consultation with the executive of the Shire at the time, my aim was to create a facility that would complement the claim of this region being known as the horse capital of Victoria. There were no other equestrian or agistment facilities in the region at the time. Various forms of funding, the bigger picture, were discussed with the council's executive at the time, and the idea of a house lot excision was put forward early on by a senior council officer. This has formed a big part of my long-term business plan. The business enterprises, in particular the Euroa Horse Park and the Euroa Agistment and Equestrian Centre, have been extensively developed to a point where it is now difficult for me to do them justice by myself. And so discussions to activate the idea of a house lot excision were reinitiated with council 2 years ago so that we could consider the various options and decide on the best process moving forward. Several options were dismissed as not favourable. Now, I understand that there is a process that needs to be followed, but my expectation is that that process will be done with integrity, transparency, in a fair and reasonable way. The fact is, on 6 separate occasions, council officers have led me to believe that if I made improvements to the farm, that my application would be supported. The entire planning department and various executives were aware of this and have never challenged this commitment. I have borrowed $150,000 and worked full-time for the last 12 months to fulfil my commitment to this process. The fact is that council officers have now decided not to fulfil their commitment to this process by recommending a refusal. This planning report is not accurate and fails to mention that we withdrew the application in order to overcome some of the issues raised by the first objection and to proceed with further works on the southern end, proposed lot 2, in order to overcome the speculative nature of my plan. I apologise that we have inundated you with information, but this process has been ongoing for 2 years and council officers have taken 60 days to inform us of this decision. Despite our request for a meeting and more time, we have only been given 6 days to prepare for this meeting. Is this fair or reasonable? Does this promote trust and confidence in the people of Strathbogie? I am feeling completely shattered. I have faced many challenges in my life, but none that are as quite as important to me as this. Please. It's not much.
I'll give you a few seconds just to finish into a final sentence, sum up.
I'm not often lost for words or this emotional, but this situation has literally taken my breath away.
Thank you, Vanessa.
I feel so betrayed and let down.
Thank you, and I appreciate. Yes.
Excuse me, Madam, are we able to ask questions of clarification?
Yes, are we doing that at the end though? We've got someone else to go.
Sure.
We're doing it at the end,
Sure.
right? Thank you, Vanessa. Are you okay?
Yep.
Please take your water with you. Okay, I'm now going to call on Angelina Bell. Okay, you tell us when you're ready and we'll start the clock, Angelina.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors and council staff. My name is Angelina Bell of Bell Legal and Planning, and I represent Vanessa Hawkins in relation to the application for the 2-lot subdivision. Firstly, I want to say how disappointed or how disappointing it is that we're at this point. We've been working with council now for some time, and it was only last week that we were advised the assessing officer was recommending a refusal for this application. Despite what you may have been told by the planners, we were told both verbally and in writing on numerous occasions that council officers would support the application for the 2-lot subdivision once the works outlined in the farm management plan were implemented on proposed lot 2. Site meetings were had with council officers where they were suitably impressed by the work and commitment Vanessa has put into the land. The support of the council officers is evidenced in writing, and 2 examples of this were provided to you this morning. It's important to note that the in-principle support provided to us at no time was revoked, retracted or withdrawn. But for this in-principle support from the council officers, Vanessa would not have proceeded with implementing the works required on proposed lot 2. It is because of this written support and agreement on how to move forward with the subdivision that Vanessa did the work and spent a significant amount of money on the required infrastructure, as well as obtaining a planning permit for the farm sheds and erosion works on the southern part of the land, which haven't been mentioned in the agenda report. The works undertaken were to take the application from speculation to reality. It has shown the commitment of Vanessa and her genuine intention to farm, continue farming, and to improve the productivity of the land. The report in the agenda is prejudiced, biased, it is not transparent, and is misleading in that it omits really critical aspects of this application. It has used emotive language to lead councillors in a particular direction. These agenda items must present an impartial viewpoint, and this one does not. The writer has not recognised that the keeping and breeding of horses is a genuine agricultural activity, despite Strathbogie Shire being heralded as the horse capital of Victoria. It is misleading as it has omitted key events. There's no mention of early discussions that were had on site, no mention of the in-principle support provided by council officers on the basis that works were undertaken, no mention of any site inspections of the improvement works done, no mention that further written and verbal in-principle support was provided after the works were done, no mention of the planning permit granted in accordance with that list of improvements for the farm shed and stables, and no mention of the extensive erosion works done in accordance with that planning permit. The planning officer has speculated that proposed lot 1 will be used for rural lifestyle purposes, despite it being set up as a working farm with infrastructure to support the keeping and breeding of horses. Further, that significant work has been put into setting up the farming infrastructure on proposed lot 2 in line with the actions in the farm management plan. Rural horse park, ESB horses and ESB cattle. The planning officer has provided no evidence to support the claims that it will be used for anything other than agriculture, other than broad statements and speculation. The farm is already a productive farming enterprise, and the evidence that it will continue to be used for agriculture has been provided in the application supporting documents, as well as evidence on the ground. The planning officer has also assumed that farming productivity will be reduced when a comprehensive farm management plan was provided with the application that demonstrates otherwise. The proposed outcomes of the subdivision are not speculative. Vanessa has shown her genuine commitment to the productive capacity of the land and has acted in good faith. Horse farming is an agricultural activity, and horse farming is considered primary production. This proposal supports orderly planning in this area known as the horse capital of Victoria. The proposed 2-lot subdivision will provide a significant increase in the agricultural productivity of the land, increased biodiversity values at the site, protection of vegetation and maintenance of water quality and stream health. It provides for the continuation of a highly successful equine operation and improved agricultural productivity with the proposed cattle and horse enterprise on proposed lot 2. The proposal has addressed and is consistent with the purpose and objectives of the planning scheme as demonstrated in the application documents. And there is precedent for the approval of small lot subdivisions in Strathbogie Shire. Council has adopted the council plan which affirms council's alignment with the following strategic focus: accountability, transparency and responsibility. Council needs to take responsibility for the written direction it gave my client and its written advice that it would support the application for the subdivision. Council needs to be accountable for the written advice it gives and be transparent in its decision making. Councillors, we ask that you put forward an alternative motion tonight to support the application in accordance with that written support provided on more than one occasion by the planning officer. I ask that councillors act, just the sentence, we ask that councillors act with accountability, responsibility, transparency, integrity and honour its commitment and support this application.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions of councillors?
Councillor Stevens, you had a question?
Actually, I'd like to ask the other lady first and then maybe one of this, Angela, if I may, please. Is that all right?
One would you like me to?
Are you okay?
No, you can do it there.
Yeah. I couldn't make notes quick enough and listen to what you were saying at the same time. You spoke to options. Could you go back to your notes, please, and just read the paragraph about the options? I think it was on your first page, or maybe the top of the second.
In relation to the subdivision?
I just remember noting options and I couldn't capture what you were saying.
So I think
Suspend standing orders to allow this to be sorted out.
concern.
Thank you very much. Can we not have comments, please, in there?
It's a point of clarification.
Thank you, though.
Read that paragraph.
Yes, so when I met with council 2 years ago to consider the various options and decide on the best process moving forward, several options were dismissed as not favourable. That related, in my memory, to where the actual post title boundary of the subdivision could
Thank you, sir.
complement the creek and the neighbours and activities. So
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify, it was in relation to planning options, not options for you to meet your personal requirements. I'm just trying to,
it probably went hand in hand.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, point of order. You have to suspend standing order.
Sorry,
Yes, you do.
sorry.
I know local government, I know the better of something. You need to suspend it to allow that.
Mr. Mara, I will ask you to sit down. If you interrupt again, I will ask you to leave.
No, you're not. Sorry.
Councillor Stevens, you have another question?
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
They are points of clarification. I'd just like to clarify why I'm asking these questions. Angela, thank you. Apologise, Angelina. You have represented the applicant. In doing so, you would have researched and had an awareness of the current zoning, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And an awareness of the Planning Environment Act.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the permitted lot size that was permissible in this area, did you have an awareness of what that was?
Oh, absolutely.
The
Yeah,
minimum-
this application is an application that that can be made through the planning scheme. There's provision for it in the farming zone.
Minimum of 40 hectares is the point I'm speaking to. I'm just seeking clarification. Were you aware of that?
I'm aware that if you're doing a standard 2-lot subdivision, there's a 40 hectare minimum.
Yeah.
One of the dot points in the farming zone is that you can create smaller lots if it is for a household excision. And that's the provision that this application has been made under.
Thank you.
So it's allowable under the farming zone.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions of councillors? Councillor Jeffrey?
I have a question of clarification for Vanessa, please.
Excuse me, sorry, should I sit down?
That'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
And the question is, Vanessa, why do you need to subdivide this property? Not clear on that.
I run the property on my own. I have developed several business activities on that property, and I'm finding it doesn't do justice to those business activities because I just don't have the time or energy to do them justice. So I'd like to focus on 2 of the enterprises, not 4. And to do justice to the facilities I've developed, someone will do that.
Nice follow-up question for you then.
Yeah.
I'm still not clear why the property needs to be subdivided, and particularly with a 40 hectare residual block.
Yes, can I?
No, I'd like to hear from Vanessa, please. It's the owner.
Nice one.
Running 28, 20.
Okay, can we,
It's more than enough for one person.
I have some health issues as well that I need to consider in my old age, in my forward planning for the farm as well.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions of councillors? No? Oh, sorry, councillor Halson, sorry.
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'll direct this to Vanessa. A number of emails have been spoken to about in principle approval. If in fact improvements were done, what I'm interested in understanding is, were the improvements ever defined? Were there specific improvements referred to? And if so, what were they?
Yes, and you should have seen an email
Okay, I've just come back in from New Zealand after a 10-year family funeral, so I may not be aware of that.
So, yes, is the answer. There's been quite extensive information provided to council officers with photographic evidence. They've been on site just to inspect the works that has been done.
So 12 months ago, just to clarify that, 12 months ago, the message to us was that the subdivision as it stands would not be supported because it was deemed to be speculative about what was proposed with the farm management plan. So that list of improvements was put together and clearly defined, including getting planning permits for the sheds and erosion works. That list was discussed in detail with the manager at the time 12 months ago. And the agreement was, he said, well, if you can do that, that shows that it's not speculative anymore, that there is a genuine commitment to continue farming the land. And so it was that the municipal support was based on having that list, that defined list of activities and works done. So Vanessa went ahead and did those works, and then we invited the manager of planning and a senior planner came back out again to look at the works. We're very happy with what had gone on and said, yep, now we're happy for you to resubmit that 2-lot subdivision application because you've ticked off all those defined works that were on that list.
And also the administrator was also part of the conversation.
And I'll just make the comment, Councillor Hassel, that wasn't in principle approval in the wording of the email, it was in principle support.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll just make that clarification. Okay, any more questions? Councillor Stebbins.
Madam Mayor, I would like to ask that we could suspend standing orders and go into confidential to seek advice on something. Is that possible, please?
If
I get a seconder to go into,
Yeah, we can suspend standing orders. We just need to have a motion.
do you have
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend standing.
Standing orders and to go into confidential to seek some advice.
Okay, so you're moving that motion?
Please.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Binks. Okay, so now we've got Hillary.
We need to
Vote.
You've got a vote. That'd help. That motion to a vote.
all those in favour?
The motion is carried. All those in favour, all those, so you're there, sorry.
Thank
You're
you.
going to have to bear with me a little bit. I'm a bit out of my depth.
Sorry.
No, it's good. We want to get it right. Okay, so now we'll need to clear the,
Or do we, it might be,
easy given there's so many of you for us to go.
You've got a recording, councillor.
and can we ask for the live stream?
Stop. Can we ask
Just then. And then leave it open for questions. Everyone's welcome to
I'm glad speaking.
5 minutes to speak. Or in here.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you very much. We'll now return to the order of the council meeting. So, councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Is the live stream? I've got to restate it. Okay. Sorry. Firstly, I'll go back a minute. Is the live stream up and running? Okay. Going back to item 11.1.1, planning report, planning application P2025-023, 2 Milllands Lane, Euroa. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the alternate motion as presented, to wit, that council, having public notice of planning permit application number P2025-023 pursuant to section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, decides to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit under the provisions of the strategic planning scheme in respect to the land known as 2 Millards Lane, Euroa, Victoria, 3666, brackets lot 1, PS 803102R, and brackets, for a 2-lot subdivision, brackets house lot excision, in accordance with the endorsed plan, subject to the following conditions. Conditions 1 through 15 as detailed on page 35 through to page 38 of the agenda, with a minor change to item 10 to replace the word occupancy with compliance.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. If you could just give me a few minutes, I'm just going to refer to the CEO. Okay, you're right. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Right. Do we have any objection to that motion? Councillor Biggs, thank you. And Councillor Halsall. Councillor Holloway, as the mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. And briefly, this is far and away the most difficult decision that's come to myself as a councillor, and actually one of the more difficult decisions I have ever seen. The volume of documentation received has been enormous. And I would like to thank the applicant and Ms. Bell for supplying additional clarifying documentation, which serves to guide my thinking on this. I note that in officers' discussion of this, they have stated that surrounding blocks are between 84 and I think 1,200 acres. This is strictly true for adjoining blocks only, but if one were to go out to a radius of 2 kilometers, there would be dozens of blocks that are 20 hectares or less. So one cannot state that this block is squarely within a broadacre farming area, even if it is farming zone. I note that the application does meet prima facie reasons to support a subdivision. I wouldn't say strongly, but it does meet them. However, balanced against the documentation itself is concerns around process and the Shire meeting its word. I believe there has been correspondence with the applicant that strongly indicates in plain English that if they support certain conditions, which they did, that officers would support this subdivision. So I cannot in good conscience go with the recommendation in the agenda because it is contrary to what has been indicated to this applicant. Therefore, I am much more comfortable moving the alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. As seconded, Councillor Jeffrey,
I'd like to
would
reserve.
you like to reserve your right? That's fine. Would any councillor like to speak to the objection of the motion?
Oh.
Councillor Biggs.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Ewart-Kennedy. And I think it's important to note that we've got a decision on a planning matter in front of us that has been looked at through our planning scheme, and we have a delegates report, which I understand has been extensively reviewed, both in-house and peer reviewed, in an external expert as well. All of those reviewers came to the same conclusion that this permit under our current planning scheme should come to us for a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit. On page 18 of the delegate's report, which is page 34 of our agendas tonight, it states really clearly that the proposal is inconsistent with the purpose and relevant decision guidelines of the farming zone, clause 35.7 of the Strathbogie planning scheme, as it results in the creation of a lifestyle-sized lot which may or may not retain the current farming activity or be capable of accommodating any alternative future agricultural activity, including the ability for expansion. B, has failed to demonstrate that the subdivision supports or enhances the agricultural productivity of the land. C, restricts the future operation of the agricultural activities on the proposed lot 1. D, has the potential to adversely affect the use of land for agriculture, both on the land due to the proposed lot size and activities on the surrounding area. There's some additional points there that form part of that report as well. And given that this is a planning matter and has gone through those processes, I'm confident with what the officers reported to us, wrote in their report to us in our papers today, and therefore I am not in support of granting a permit as has been put forward by Councillor Holloway today.
Yes, Councillor Halsall.
Sorry, just to point of clarification, should we not go to a?
I just checked.
Oh no, previously we would go from a objector to someone that would invite someone who would like to speak in favour.
Would anyone else like to speak in favour of the motion?
Can I speak to the motion without stating a position at this time? I'd like to.
I don't know. I'll just get some advice. Yes.
And appreciate.
Okay.
Yep, I'm still open-minded. The matters I'd like to speak to, we have said in chambers many, many times that we are here to protect the agricultural productivity of our community. As has been mentioned today, agricultural activity does speak to equine. We've also said many times that there are planning restrictions. We're guided by legislation and documents in relation to how we do this. For this area, the current situation is minimum lots of 40 acres. I've noted all the comments that have been made today, including the gentleman, Mr Carrington, in relation to his concerns, and I think some of those concerns are very valid. I have noted other comments by other presenters and other documentation that's been put before us. I do have a concern, even though technically there might be a technicality here that might allow a block size under 40 acres with the existing house on it. It is not something that the documentation speaks to that should be encouraged, and there are many reasons as to why. Another concern I have is that the current use of this land is equine. There is no guarantee that into the future that land use may not change, and there are concerns about what impact that might have. It currently sits, the proposal does currently sit that it's inconsistent with the farming zone clause of the Strathbogie planning scheme. It does remain silent in relation to the smaller blocks with a house on them. We have to be mindful of the thin edge of the wedge in what we're trying to protect here and what we're trying to achieve. If this is voted positively to give endorsement to this, I would like to strongly say that in my mind, it by no means presents a prerequisite for any other application that comes before this council. Every application must be discussed and decided upon its merits. So if anyone thinks that if this does get through tonight that it's open slather, I would caution that on what I've just said. The history to this site is concerning in that originally it was 109 acres, as Mr Carrington spoke to. There was a boundary realignment that reduced that down. So yet again, this is a discussion about reducing productive agricultural land down in size. I note the comment from the fellow councillor about the surrounding parcels of land that are of a small size, but I also note that the Seven Creeks sits beside this as well, so there's a substantial parcel there. So I put that commentary on the table. Thank you.
Very well timed again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey. Oh, you preserved it. Councillor, would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Halsall.
I'd like just a point of clarification with Clark's motion. In point 2, layout not altered, I'm just having trouble understanding which block that refers to. The layout of the development must not be altered from the layout on the approved and endorsed plans without written consent of the responsible authority. And I'm trying to understand why that's relevant.
About the agenda items?
No, I'm talking about your motion with your conditions. Yeah, please.
As part of the conditions in the delegates report, so if you go down to talks to page 35 through to 38 of the delegates report, so those can.
Yeah, I don't think it's clear in the report.
This is the motion.
Yep.
That's not the motion. That's
We're not meant to be debating the motion, so can I bring everyone back? It's in the conditions, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. Are you continuing to speak?
No, actually, no. I will rest at this.
Has everyone? The only thing I would say that I think this, I agree with Councillor Holloway. This is one of the toughest decisions that it is the toughest decisions I've had in our very short 6 months. But and I do appreciate we're a council that has come in with a very strong remit to restore integrity and faith and transparency, and we've also been very committed to economic development. Also very committed to protecting our agricultural land. So this is a decision that I personally am very vexed with, and I've said that before. I've taken into account quite a few things, obviously the borrowings and the situation that the applicant finds herself in, which I think she's presented her case very well, and I appreciate the detail you've gone to provide us with the full information. But I do think we need to be aware that this is a tough call for our council, And I agree with Councillor Stevens, this should not be, whichever way it lands, should not be, if it lands that we decide as a council vote for that to grant a permit tonight, it is not an open slather for our beautiful region, because our community is here, we're here to protect our region, but also encourage economic development and economic, the encouragement of good agricultural practices. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, the mover, you have sorry. As seconder, Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to do your own comment?
Very briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I acknowledge and build on both yours and Councillor Holloway's points. And I speak without having resolved in my mind what I need to do here. Very, very challenging situation that we find ourselves in, with seemingly emerging information as time goes on. Understanding some of the country that we're referring to here, I believe that it is what we would call light country, Granite Hills country, and small lot sizes create issues in terms of viability and neighbourly disputes where there's misalignment between traditional farming practices and smaller businesses and smaller lifestyle blocks. That being said, I also acknowledge the effort and 2 years of being in the planning process and the significant work and funds that have been expended by the applicant in the path of having this application put to council. I think there are many conflicting priorities that we need to take into account here, and I think some of those were articulated very well, particularly by Ms. Bell. And I'd like to reiterate, particularly Councillor Stevens' point about if this was to be approved, that it doesn't set precedent, though it would appear through the council report that has been well reviewed that the application doesn't meet the requirements of the planning scheme, and understanding that our decision tonight is about whether or not the application meets the requirements of the planning scheme. Irrespective, my understanding is, of everything else that's occurred in and around the process for the last 2+ years. Thank you.
Very good time. Okay, as the mover, Councillor Holloway, you have the right of reply. Would you like to exercise?
Yeah, very briefly. I concur with comments from, I think, nearly every councillor that whichever way this goes, it should not be viewed as a precedent. Normally, my instinct is that prime agricultural land should be preserved in its entirety at any cost. I feel, however, that there are circumstances around this, both on the face of the application itself and in terms of the history of correspondence, which guide me to an alternate viewpoint.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? We have a motion is lost. Well, I'm only going what I've been told. Can I have everyone just to take a bit of a chill pill from me? It's not. This motion is lost. The motion in front of us, the alternative motion is lost.
Point of clarification. Because there's only
Six, there's not the normal 7 councillors, correct?
as men,
Put the vote.
you can exercise a casting vote. Excuse me,
She says.
Give us 2 minutes, please. Okay, we're just waiting for someone to come up on screen. And we'll... Is that right? I didn't want to put you under pressure, sorry. Tingo. That.
She said it's lost.
Okay, in the event that we had a split vote, which we did because we had a councillor that's on leave of absence, the mayor has the casting vote. I'd just like to preface what I'm about to say with a very heavy heart, because I don't believe that we should be put in this situation. That's fundamentally how I feel. I think we've come to a juncture as a council that has put us in a situation that is unreasonable. And I'm not making any other comment or in relation to any conduct or anything else, except to say that I am a mayor of integrity. And if our council said, we are going to support an application if you tick a box of X, 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 and then you tick that box, I cannot, in all good conscience, and I find this really hard because it goes to the very core of our farming communities. There's many farmers sitting at this table, myself included. The protection of agricultural land and the biodiversity is absolutely crucial to this region that we're very lucky to call home. That said, this is not a position I ever want to be put in again, but I'm going to support the amended motion. Thank you. Motion is carried.
Can I ask for a division?
Sure, you can ask for a division. A division means I've got to go back and do the vote again, right? Okay, I'm now going to put the motion to a vote. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour? So Councillor Halsall, Councillor Ewart-Kennedy and Councillor Holloway. Show of hands for those against. Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Binks, Councillor Stevens. Casting vote was made by myself, Mayor Ewart-Kennedy. Motion is carried. The division is completed. We move on to item page 40. Planning application, 11.1.2, planning applications received and planning application determined. Sorry, can I ask the public gallery, if you're leaving, can you do so quietly, please? applications determined 1st of April 2025 to 30th of April 2025. The purpose of this report is to report to Council on the current planning application activity and matters considered under delegation for April 2025. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Fossell.
I wish to move a motion as the recommendation states on page 40.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Councillor Holloway. Is the motion opposed, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No? Councillor, would anyone like to speak to the motion or against the motion? No? Okay, well, I'll put the motion to the vote. Would wait. That vote said no. Then I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Motion's carried. We move to page 46. Councillors, we now move to item 11.2.1, school crossing supervision, Goulburn Street, Nagambie. The purpose of this report is to present options to council regarding the ongoing reinstatement of a school crossing supervisor at the Goulburn Street crossing outside the Nagambie Primary School. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Stevens.
Through the Mayor, I have an alternate motion, please. And I will say what that is.
Thank you. If you could explain.
It's the alternate motion is the same as what's been recommended, with a couple of slight changes in point 2 and point 6. Just points of clarification. Would you like me to keep speaking, or have you seconded and then speak to it?
Yeah, if we could just have the motion seconded. Sure. Councillor Jeffrey. Okay, as the mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Please, thank you, Mayor. As I said, it's just 2 slight changes. What's before us tonight is continuing with the school crossing supervisor at the Nagambie Primary School in Goulburn Street. Point 2 is simply adding to that officers will investigate infrastructure works and safety treatments that were recommended, and possible additional safety treatments within the Goulburn Street Nagambie School Crossing existing conditions, Road Safety Audit March 2025, for consideration within the future capital budget. So what that is saying is, in addition to the reinstatement of the crossing supervisor, that we take on board the additional mitigations that are possible at this site that came to us through the road safety audit in March, and refer to the budget program. The reason for tweaking this is previously it was speaking just to accepting the recommendations of that report. And what I'm saying is we need to keep an open mind to other possibilities of mitigation. And I trust the director to be able to adequately investigate that and report back to us. Point 6 is just clarifying who we're going to write to. Write to the Minister of Transport Infrastructure, the Honourable Gabriel William MP, and the Minister for Roads and Road Safety, the Honourable Melissa Horn, advocating for a contribution to deliver the Goulburn Street Nagambie School Crossing Supervision Service in line with the state government school crossing supervision subsidy interim guidelines, which is another big mouthful, but basically writing to the appropriate ministers to advocate for funding to provide the school crossing supervisor position. Thank you. That's my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amended motion? No? Then I will put the amended motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. Councillors, we now move to item 11.3.1, Euroa sale yards fees and charges on page 85. The purpose of this report is to ratify and approve changes to fees at the Roa Sale Yards for May and June 2025. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I move the recommendation on page 85 of the agenda as the motion, please?
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Holloway. As the mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, this is to recognise that the successful tenderer for weighing, scanning and private weighs at the Roa Sale Yards has a changed fee schedule from the previous incumbent. And the purpose of this motion is to recognise those changed fees such that we're able to have a cost recovery on this service.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to the motion? I should have asked. No. Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I will briefly say that these fees, while they do go up substantially, is just pass through of the contractors' updated fees. One of them goes down, the other two go up substantially. So this fee raise is not a council revenue raising effort. It is just passing on the costs associated with the new contractor.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? And I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. We now move to page 89, item 11.4.1, response to the Minister for Local Government commitment to Minister's governance expectations. The purpose of the report is to provide the community with a response to the Minister for Local Government request outlining Council's commitment to the Minister's governance expectations. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor. Committee, I'd like to move the motion as is written in the recommendation on page 89 of our paper 16.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Stevens. Do we have any opposition to the motion? Any councillor wish to? No. As the mover, Councillor Binks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Committee, I'd just like to thank the Mayor for writing such a thorough and comprehensive letter to the Minister outlining all that we have done and achieved in our commitment to good governance. Really brilliant to see, and I really want to thank you for your effort in leading us in that and in this really great report back to the Minister, and to ensure that we meet the requirements both under the Local Government Act but also that specific request to us as a council returning after a period of suspension. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Stevens, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, thank you again for corresponding on our behalf. And I think we're very lucky to have a monitor with us at this particular time, which gives us advice and guidance that can assist us as a new council to move forward to make sure that we do behave in a way that is expected of us, whether that be decision making, whether that be the way we conduct ourselves in chambers or even outside of the chambers. So I just want to say that I think we're in a very good position to move forward as a united and effective group of councillors, and I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I would like to add one thing. I also echo what Councillor Stevens said. As a first-time mayor and a first-time councillor, having a monitor at the beginning, I was not that excited about the prospect. I'm very free to admit that, but I have to say I have learned a lot. Our council has been well guided. We've had good support that's always there for all of us as individuals and collectively. And I think as a council, we are far stronger for it, which means we're setting ourselves up for a far better future than if we didn't have a monitor. So whilst I admit I was not supportive initially, I absolutely agree that it's the right thing. And I thank our monitor, Alan, for being here. So If there's no other speakers to the motion, I'm now going to put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Councillors, we now move to item 11.4.2 on page 97, S5 Instrument of Delegation to Chief Executive Officer. The purpose of the report is to ensure that the S5 Instrument of Delegation Council to Chief Executive Officer is current. Councillors, do we have any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I move the recommendation on page 97 of our agenda as the motion, please?
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hounsell. Are there any objections? Sorry, is the motion opposed, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Jeffrey, as the mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just to say that the instrument of delegation is in regards to our new CEO Quattrocchi, and this is a largely administrative motion to delegate authority from council to CEO Quattrocchi. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Hounsell, would you like to speak to the motion, or reserve your own? Okay. If there's no other speakers to the motion, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. We now move to page 104, item 11.4.3, Council Financial Report, March 2025. The purpose of this report is for Council to note the quarterly financial report and financial statements for the 9 months ending 31st of May 2025. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? Sorry, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I move the recommendation as outlined on page 104 of our agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Is the motion opposed, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
I wish to speak.
Yep.
Councillors, I'd like to draw your attention to page 118, specifically the part that displays a proportion of local procurement. I hope you share my desire to see local wedge grow significantly over our term. Local investment by council in our community should be our priority, along with investing in human capital and capital capacity building. Reinvesting the rates and charges paid by our community into our community will support our local businesses and contractors, creating employment opportunities for our young people, and is a real step towards long-term sustainability. Local capacity building is a choice. It requires strategy and time. Using local community for contracting, consulting, expert knowledge, products and strategic partnerships is an important avenue to connect, sustain and deliver.
Thank you, Councillor Hounsell. As the mover, Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to say I do echo Councillor Hounsell's comments. However, as a quarterly report, not a great deal of inference can be drawn from this in terms of financial trends, given that council is in a nearly unique position of having to rely on accruals-based accounting for some measures and cash-based accounting for others. So I would say that this is really a pro forma report, and detailed analysis can't really be drawn from it at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to?
So nothing further to add from Councillor Holloway's comments. Thank you.
Then I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. We now move to page 113. Councillors, we move to item 11.4.4, recording informal meetings of councillors, April 2025. The purpose of this report is for council to note the record of informal meetings of councillors from the 1st of April to the 30th of April. Councillors, are there any further clarifications before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to move a motion as is written in our recommendation on page 13 of the agenda papers this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Thank you. Is there any opposition? Sorry, is the motion opposed or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Binks is the mover. Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey is the seconder.
No, thank you.
Okay, I will put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Move to page 119, 11.6 Communications Engagement Advocacy. There is nil reports. Item 12, notices of motion nil. Notices 13, sorry, item 13, notices of precision nil. Item 14, confidential business nil. Item 15, urgent business. Councillor Holloway.
Yes, I would like to raise a motion to hear urgent business on the item of roadside firewood collection in the Strathbogie Shire, given that the current prohibition on it constitutes a grave risk to certain members of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Can we have, so do we need, everyone's got a copy of the motion? On that, so I've got a, I'd now like a seconder for the motion.
This is just for, listen to.
Just to remove the motion for the urgent business.
Oh, okay, sure.
Councillor Jeffrey. Okay.
We need to vote on.
Right, so we're now going to put that, the resolution to accept the urgent business to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Now we go back to the motion. Has everyone seen the motion?
Version 3.
Version 3.
Is that an email?
This is
Can we
Chloe.
get it up on the screen if possible, please?
We'll read it out at this point.
I think under the circumstances, it would be best if you read it out, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I request that council consider the following urgent business. I believe this matter to be a critical strategic risk to our Shire and our less fortunate residents. To wit, I request council to, 1, note that Strathbogie Shire area has already entered the cold of winter and has already experienced sub-zero nighttime temperatures across the Shire. 2, note that some Strathbogie Shire residents are struggling financially and rely on low-cost firewood from designated collection points in order to maintain health and comfort during cold months. 3, note that council has for the past 2 years relied upon DECA designated collection points to fulfill the community's need for low-cost heating fuel, having previously terminated issuing permits for roadside firewood collection. 4, note that all of the 8 DECA designated firewood collection sites relied upon are over 40 kilometers distant from Euroa and distant from other Shire population centres, and mostly located in extremely challenging rough terrain along fire trails in the state forest. 2 of the closest DECA designated firewood collection sites were inspected by myself and found to be completely unsuitable for the ready provision of firewood to the community. 5, note that multiple Shire residents have made clear to multiple councillors that the facts outlined in numbers 1 to 4 above are serving to effectively prevent them from collecting low-cost firewood. 6, given that points 1 to 5 above present a risk not only to the residents themselves, but to the Shire as well, request officers to add to Council's strategic risk register an item with words to the effect of, there is a risk that Strathbogie Shire residents who are struggling financially and rely on wood heating may face grave physical harm due to the inability to heat their homes during wintertime due to lack of firewood, resulting in reputational and financial damage to the Shire. As grave physical harm denotes a critical risk, and as we are already experiencing sub-zero nighttime temperatures in Strathbogie Shire, mitigation strategies are needed with utmost priority. 7, request officers to therefore immediately implement mitigation strategies for the above critical strategic risk by methods considered most expedient and effective to provide free or low-cost firewood for those residents in need. 8, manage the above mitigation strategies such that areas of environmental or heritage concern are excluded and clearly prohibited from firewood harvesting. And 9, report back to council at earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. I noticed it's an item, not a motion. I think I used the wrong word. I'm sorry. So could I have a seconder for that item? Councillor Jeffrey, thank you. Is the motion opposed, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Biggs?
Opposing.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were speaking. So you're opposing? Thank you. Councillor Holloway, as the mover, yeah, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. Give me a moment. Unfortunately, we as a Shire have entered a period of extreme financial stress placed upon households, particularly those in rural and regional areas such as ours, due to macroeconomic factors at the state, national, and even global level. To wit, wages are generally stagnant or rising weekly, while virtually all costs are spiraling out of control. We are almost certainly already in an undeclared recession, with recessions being only able to be officially designated full 6 months or 2 quarters after data indicating it's happening. Against this backdrop, many battlers in our Shire are struggling to meet basic expenses such as paying bills, putting food on their tables, and heating their homes in winter. It is to that latter topic that I turn now. Many households in our Shire either rely solely on wood-fired heating in winter or can use wood with electric and/or gas. Where there is availability of electric or gas heating to augment or replace wood heating is fast becoming a moot point as the price of gas has spiraled out of control in recent years, and electricity is not far behind. In fact, we are approaching the designated time of year when electricity providers can submit rate rise requests to the state for approval. Anyone willing to bet against them, asking and plausibly being granted another huge increase due to their own costs spiraling out of control, I certainly would not take that bet. So there are more than a few battlers for which money is tight, and even if they have access to electricity or gas, may not be able to afford to use them to heat their homes in winter. They rely on wood heating. But the cost of firewood has also spiraled out of control as those who produce it are facing their own rise in input expenses. I personally have seen firewood advertised for over $200 for a 6x4 trailer load. Given many such trailer loads are required to heat an average home over an average winter, let alone an unseasonably cold one, even firewood is now becoming a potential source of financial stress. Summarize. We as an organization are charged with caring for our local community, cannot seriously expect battlers needing heat in winter to travel long distances and negotiate four-wheel drive only tracks as a solution to their needs. There will be one of two responses to this from the community. Those who are not law-abiding will flout the prohibition and collect firewood from the Shire roadside near to their homes anyway. By not designating permitted areas, we then introduce a risk to those in need who will collect firewood from any area near to them, including those with environmental or heritage concerns attached. Effectively permitting firewood collection in some way, shape, or form allows a regulation mechanism that steers community members to areas that have no environmental concerns, no heritage concerns, and possibly excess fuel load. The real risk we run is for those battlers who are law-abiding and would rather freeze them.
I'll get you on wind up. You've got about another 10 seconds.
Yeah. This is the main strategic risk that I have outlined to officers and touched upon within the motion itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Okay. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak?
I'd like to reserve my right. Thank you,
Is that
Madam.
right? Okay, thank you. Councillor Biggs, would you like to speak to the motion as opposing?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Yeah, I just think I have a few concerns with this motion. I acknowledge and can accept a lot of Councillor Holloway's points. However, we had a briefing today from officers regarding road firewood collection in the Strathbogie Shire, and which covered a lot of the issues that the practice can touch on, and the relevant legislation that we are required to abide by under law, both federally, there's the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, and at the state level we have the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act 1988. There's also relevant council plans and policies which the practices of collecting roadside firewood would be impacted by. There's 5 listed in our briefing from today. In addition to that, there was a conversation around the partnerships and strategic partnerships that we have with various agencies, both at the federal level with DECA and working on those relationships, and then also in the community with the groups that the partnerships that exist through community. And there were some really great suggestions that came from council officers as ways to explore this. So my concern with this motion is that it is rushed. It doesn't, I don't believe, follow our commitment to good governance, because I have concerns with, particularly in, sorry, I'm just using a few different devices here, point 7 and point 8 of Councillor Holloway's motion around what those, the request for officers to therefore immediately implement mitigation strategies for the above critical strategic risks by methods considered most expedient and effective to provide free and low cost firewood to those residents in need, and manage the above mitigation strategies. I just think that there's potential for this to become quite oblique to the council officers as to what is it that they're actually being asked to do here. There's a potential for it to perhaps reintroduce a practice that maybe didn't meet legislation previously, and there's the potential for it to be misused. I'm also concerned about we have no idea what this is going to cost the organisation, our officers. I know that originally when the decision was made at an officer level, CEO level, to cease roadside fire collection, that was in relation to concerns. Sure. In relation to insurance concerns around the collecting on the roadside, and what responsibilities we have there around occupational health and safety and providing safety in that regard. So I can't support it because of the rush nature. I believe that our officers are working on solutions, and I would much prefer it to become a formal part of our agenda through the process of regular council business.
Thanks. Any other councillor would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Howson.
I too am a councillor that's had this raised directly by community members. Unfortunately, I wasn't present in today's briefing. So Laura's information about the layers of legislation is new. But I agree and support Clark's intent and the requirement for it to be dealt with in urgent business. It is an immediate need. We do have -2, and I believe it's necessary for us to put measures in place, or at least to propose them and research them to support our community.
Thank you, Councillor Household. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Holloway, for putting this up. I understand what's behind it. We have a responsibility to the members of our community for their health and wellbeing and their safety. Of course we do. That's one of our considerations. How we achieve that is not always simple. I note that the motion doesn't specifically speak to permits per se, but I'm assuming that that would be one of the considerations you're asking of the officers to revisit and bring something back to us as to how that might be managed. I do see the urgency to this. I have confidence in the information that's been shared by our director today, Director McNulty, that there, and sorry, Rachel, sorry. Sorry, Fran, yes, sorry. About some quick fixes that we might be able to negotiate with other community-minded people in the community. And I'm really hoping that that is going to be explored regardless. I too am a bit concerned about pushing this through so quickly, which is a dilemma. There was another point, sorry, it was along the lines of an avenue available to us is to bring this back, maybe seek advice from the officers, bring this back in an extraordinary council meeting for a decision. So we don't really need to make a decision on this tonight if the officers have an awareness that this is a matter that we're looking for further information on. That's my understanding, or am I wrong? I'll seek advice on that.
And I'm just getting advice, but I understand that's an amendment. Be an amendment to the motion.
To
take it away if you're not going to vote on it. You're seeking an amendment to the motion?
Well, it says to report back to council at the earliest opportunity on implementation. So my interpretation of that is that we're putting it before staff tonight with these acknowledgements and requests, and they will bring something back to us in the very near future. Is that a correct interpretation?
No, that's not the way I read it. I read it that report back to council at earliest opportunity on implementation of 7 through to 8.
So immediately mitigation strategies could be what staff have alluded to by the partnership arrangement with community groups. That could be an immediate conversation to be held, and that's a form of mitigation to the risk that our residents are currently experiencing. Managing above mitigation strategies.
So can I just seek confirmation? Are you seeking an amendment to the motion?
Reading those sections, no. I think my interpretation is that we're asking them to explore the opportunities that were brought to our attention today. And if that's correct, no, I don't need an amendment to it.
Is that what the intent of your motion was, Councillor Holder?
The intent of the motion is basically 6, 7, and 8. It's to formally recognize this risk, adopt mitigation strategies such that people in need get firewood, and manage these strategies such that environmental and heritage concerns are excluded. I note that this, with a large amount of consultation with officers, does not proscribe roadside fire collection. It allows for officers to implement in any way they see fit, such that indigent people get firewood quick.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So we're not bringing a report back we're bringing a report back. Sorry, the council officers are on the implementation.
Yeah, that clarification was helpful. Thank you.
No worries. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Before I ask, are you going to speak? Before you ask, I just want to say something. So I have been approached by in north of 10 people of the Strathbogie region who are concerned about their supply of firewood. Some of them fall into the category of not being able to financially afford or being physically able to get it. And I think that's a very valid point. And I think part of our role as councillors, and Councillor Holloway elocuted beautifully when he said, we're here to care for our community and we're here to act for our community. And that's what I think is one of our jobs, and it's not an easy job sometimes, as we saw tonight on another matter, but I completely agree with the concerns that Councillor Binks raised also, that it has come in a slightly hurried way, but unfortunately the low temperatures have hit us pretty hard this week, and I think that on the back of the cost of living crisis and the proposed ESVF tax by the state government has got a lot of people out there really concerned about their economic survival. And we do need to take into account and balance the needs of the heritage and the biodiversity needs of our community, but we also need to make sure that we look after the people in our community. They're the ones we represent in this chamber. So that's all I'll say on the matter. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To add to your point and Councillor Holloway's points, I'm supportive of this motion because, like you, I've had a lot of people approach me about this particular issue. Our community is suffering and we need to understand that. We really need to get to the bottom of that. We need to protect and enhance our community wherever possible. There's been no evidence presented that the CEO under delegation who removed the access to firewood from public lands, it's a public resource on public lands, took into account the risk to the community that Councillor Holloway has talked about, and only took into account the risk to the organisation. I take issue with that. What that's meant is that firewood collection along council roads is largely now uncontrolled, and there's people illegally moving firewood because they don't have any other supply. The firewood sites, as provided by DECA, are at a great distance to our towns, and as Councillor Holloway pointed out, the supply at those particular sites is not necessarily there. The people that require this firewood are not in a position to be travelling at a minimum. The closest we've identified from Euroa is 40 kilometres, 80 kilometre round trip to get firewood. From Avenel, it's probably 80 to 100 kilometres one way. And to my mind, that's a completely unacceptable ask of our community when there is firewood close by and is currently being accessed. Not an illegal fashion, which then drives that behaviour that could impact sensitive vegetation and otherwise, because it's very much uncontrolled. I'm mostly in support of this motion because the briefing that we received today did not answer the queries that I presented last week, and nor did it drive action. And I mostly support Councillor Holloway's motion because it drives action towards a solution with immediate effect. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holloway is the mover. Would you like to, no, you've already spoken. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Votes against? Motion's carried. We do have an additional urgent business item, which I will raise. Do I need to do another vote?
I would like to.
Could you? Yeah, thank you, Scott. Could you explain what the additional item of? Are we explaining or just asking?
For clarification, do I need to move a motion to include another item?
Yes.
Of urgent business?
Yes.
I'd like to move a motion to include another item as urgent business, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey, for doing that. Could I have a second to that?
And we need to know the title, sorry.
It's struggling to find it.
The title is to extend the formal submission process on the draft key strategic documents, which is our council plan documents.
Thank you. Could I have a second to the motion, please? Councillor Halsall, thank you. The motion is carried. Oh, sorry. Can we have a vote?
No.
Speak to it.
Yes.
You speak.
I'm going to speak to it. You don't speak to it if you're moving in my.
Sure.
It's just to get the item.
Just get the item in. Right. All those in favour of putting an additional item of business, an urgent business? Those in favour? Motion is carried. Right. Councillor Jeffrey, councillors, we have a motion. Can you explain what your motion is, please? Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move the motion that council extend the formal submission process on the following draft key strategic documents: Draft Community Vision 2035, Draft Council Plan 2025 to 2029, incorporating the Draft Community Vision, Draft Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan 2025 to 2029, Draft Disability Action Plan 2025 to 2029, and Draft Council Plan Annual Action Plan 2025 to 2026. Draft Financial Plan 2025 to 2035, Draft Asset Plan 2025 to 2035, Draft 2025-2026 Budget, Draft Revenue and Rating Plan 2025, and Draft Fees and Charges 2025 to 2026, with an extended submission to close at 2 p.m. on Thursday, 22nd of May 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Can I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Holloway. Is the motion opposed, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens, are you opposing or are you speaking?
Well, initially opposing.
Opposing.
Yep.
Can I just get some advice, please, because I wasn't here when. Okay, sorry, I just wasn't here when you, okay. Right. So we have opposition to it. As the mover, Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the motion is to extend the open times for community feedback on our draft council plan documents by approximately a day and a half. And this is due to having feedback from the community that they would like more time to provide that feedback. And I understand and endorse that with everything that's going on in the community at the moment, that people are short of time to provide adequate feedback. And I think this timing still allows us to meet all of our ongoing obligations with regards to the council plan and allow that feedback from community members who require the extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Councillor Holloway, you seconded it, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, but would you like to speak? Would you like to reserve your?
I will speak now. Thank you. I just briefly like to say that our final councillor values is responsiveness, and this is responding to one major portion of the community's quite reasonable request for an extension of time for a day and a half. Rather than going down the route of providing an extension to that one party, I personally feel it is most appropriate and most transparent to extend it to everyone for a day and a half. That 2 p.m. on Thursday, 22nd May time and date is literally the last point at which officers can reasonably collate submissions. So I sort of thank them for their in principle ability to work with this motion. And I just feel that in terms of hearing everyone's voices, which we as a council want to do, this is a very small price to pay to allow the community to feel confident that if they make a request that we can accommodate, we will accommodate it in pursuit of hearing everyone's voice.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Stevens?
Yeah, thank you.
Opposition to the motion?
Yeah, I did. I just think it sounds maybe a bit mean not to give a day and a half to something, but this has been, all these documents have been out there for 21 days. And I understand pressures of life that come into play and you know, there are lots of competing priorities. But this is one organisation that has made an approach to us and they've had 21 days and they could have taken questions and hearings opportunities to bring additional stuff to us if they needed to. I'm cautious of setting precedents where we have timelines clearly advertised and articulated that this is the opportunity you've got, this is when it finishes. And sometimes we just have to work hard to meet those timelines. And I know it's challenging, it's not easy. The point about making it available to everyone, I don't think that's a reality with respect. I just think it's such short notice. We've only got tomorrow and half a day on Thursday to get this opportunity out to other groups in our community that may have been juggling the same challenges that this group has been juggling. And for whatever reason, they've not been able to make the deadline, but they figure, well, the deadline's up. So they've sort of thought, well, I haven't met the deadline, so it's all over and done with. And not made the approach for extensions because maybe they didn't see that as appropriate. I just don't think it's fair and equitable. And I think the opportunity is well and truly being presented to the community. So for that reason, I'm saying no.
Thank you, Councillor Stephens. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Housen.
Dana, I don't share your view about sticking to the advertised. In a time where we've really struggled to get community engagement, the fact that a community has actively sought an extension to participate in the consultation, I would like to welcome. I wouldn't like to see a precedence of leave it to the last minute and ask for an extension in the future, but to consider and to value the community's input at this point, I think is really important, particularly on these documents because they shape the next 4 years at a minimum and some 10 years.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Housen. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Yeah, I concur with Councillor Halser. Like, it's not typical that you'd want a request for extension at such late notice, and we need to acknowledge it does put an impost on our staff, and the knock-on effect of that is not insignificant. Where they're a small team and they do an incredible hard work. So the fact that they had capacity for some flexibility, a day and a half, it's not huge, but given that this does include the draft council plan in particular, which is that next 4-year strategic document that's going to drive our council and how we operate, I'm in support of this motion, and I'll be sharing it with everyone I can in my network. So I appreciate it's last minute, and some might feel a bit frustrated that maybe they worked really hard today to get a submission in, and finding out at the last literally at the 11th hour that there is an extension can be frustrating, but hopefully we get greater contribution from community right across the board because of it. So
thank you, Councillor Binks. I would like to add to that I think it's admirable that a community organisation who are made up of volunteers, yes, they're businesses, but the organisation itself is made up of volunteers, have approached us and asked us for a extension. And I do acknowledge the work of the council officers and the impost on them, and I do appreciate the fact that they've found that additional time and that capacity in their work schedule. So I think as a council, I'm very supportive of community engagement, and I'm reinforce what Councillor Holloway said about being responsive. We only got this email this morning requesting it, so the fact that we've turned it around and put it into tonight's council meeting is testament to the council staff and to our council for working together collegially for the community. So I'm supporting it. Any other comments? Sorry, anyone else like to speak? Anyone spoken, haven't they? Yes. Okay.
I've replied.
As the mover, would you like to write a reply?
No.
I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. The next ordinary meeting of Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on the 17th of June 2025 at the Euroa Communities Conference Centre, commencing at 4 p.m. There being no further business, the meeting closed at 6:24 p.m. And we have the live